Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, August 27th. Today is day 326 since October 7th. In the last 24 hours, Israeli troops have rescued a hostage that's been held in Gaza since October 7th, according to the military. The hostage's name is Farhan al-Qadi, 52 years old. Farhan al-Qadi was kidnapped from his security job at Kibbutz Magin's packing factory during Hamas's attack of Israel on October 7th. The Israeli military said Shadi is being transferred for medical checks at a hospital. His brother Hatham told Channel 12 News, "We hope other families get this moment." No other hostages were found in the tunnel where al-Qadi was held before escaping, according to the Israeli Defense Forces, adding that it also did not encounter his captors or any other militants. Transportation Minister Regev violated military censorship with a social media post in which she disclosed the area where he was rescued earlier on Tuesday, according to reports. So that happened today. The New York Times reported that he was found by chance during an operation that was meant to expose underground tunnels in a southern Gaza area, according to two Israeli officials. Around 20 hostages' relatives, activists briefly blocked a highway in Tel Aviv this morning, calling for a hostage release deal. Two ultra-Orthodox newspapers condemned far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's new Temple Mount Al-Aqsa compound policy, which does not limit Jewish prayer at the Al-Aqsa Mosque Temple Mount compound. So this does go against the historic status quo. You've heard me talk about before, Netanyahu's office does not agree. Many have critiqued Ben-Gvir's policies in this regard. Yated Ne'aman, affiliated with the Ashkenazi Haredi party, Degel HaTorah, published a headline in both Hebrew and Arabic on the front page today in Israel, criticizing the new policy and saying that it's the opinion of all Jewish halachic decision makers for generations that it is prohibited for Jews to ascend to the Temple Mount, and that this position is not changed. The political pyromaniac is burning the area for a second time. We are keeping close attention to that and hope that the situation does not escalate because of those comments and that potential shift in actions on the Haram al-Sharif. 4 days of ceasefire talks in Cairo concluded on Sunday with no breakthrough, as Israel and Hamas have remained far apart on key issues, including the Philadelphia corridor on the Egypt-Gaza border. Nonetheless, a U.S. official said the talks were constructive and they would continue working through group discussions this week. That was according to the New York Times. More than 1.2 million doses of the polio vaccine arrived in Gaza yesterday in preparation for a possible massive vaccination campaign. According to the UN, Israel and Gaza health authorities, this was after the first case of the disease in 25 years was confirmed earlier this month. There's been a lot of questions within the humanitarian community about how those vaccines would be distributed. Medical professionals and volunteers trained for administering polio vaccines for Gazan children, warning that if a ceasefire is not secured, it would be difficult to carry out the entire campaign, as Israeli bombings could endanger medical staff. Another fear is the evacuation of residents. Reasonable conditions for the vaccination campaign just don't exist in Gaza because the medical infrastructure there has all but been destroyed, according to a Palestinian health ministry official. Reporting to Israeli News. The United Nations has temporarily suspended its aid operations in Gaza following Israeli military evacuation orders in Deir al-Balah. There was a lot of questions about how long this happened. It was temporary suspension. It is not a permanent suspension. The Israeli military yesterday said troops were continuing to eliminate, quote, terrorists on the outskirts of Deir al-Balah. This is one of the main places where the UN has humanitarian operations, and their operations are centered there. An Israeli airstrike in Nur Sham's refugee camp in the occupied West Bank yesterday killed at least 5 Palestinians, according to Palestinian Ministry of Health. Israel's military said on social media that it had attacked an operations room in the area. One Palestinian was killed in an Israeli airstrike on a car in North Rafah, according to Al Jazeera. And according to the health ministry in Gaza, death toll there is at least 40,476 Palestinians killed, and those injured is at least 93,647 wounded. In the West Bank, Israeli settlers shot and killed 1 Palestinian and wounded 3 others in Bethlehem, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry today. The IDF said it's investigating the incident, and I did just mention about the Palestinians, 5 killed by an Israeli strike in Nur Sham's refugee camp. This was in the city of Tulkarem, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Last week, in one of my updates, I'd been talking about the escalations between Palestinian protesters and settlers in this area of the Al-Makhor Valley. This is near Beit Jala. This is in the Bethlehem district. The Kaisia family have lived for generations on a farm in the beautiful Al-Makhor Valley near Beit Jala. The family are Christian Palestinians. They're also, my understanding is, Israeli and French citizens living in the occupied West Bank. They have paperwork showing ownership of their land, according to registration. However, there's been a major dispute with Jewish settlers regarding this land since 2019, which finally erupted a few weeks ago when a group of settlers arrived unexpectedly and forcibly removed the family, throwing all of their possessions onto the road beyond the boundary of the farm. Since then, the Kaisia family have been encamped on the opposite side of the valley, where they've been having a non-violent resistance campaign to this settler confiscation. We've heard the news in the last couple of days that the mother of the family, Michelle, and her daughter, Alice, who were protesting the confiscation of the land, had been arrested by the Israeli military. Michelle, the mother, was released yesterday. Alice was released today. The confiscation of their land is a violation of international law and international human rights. This is also a part of that establishment of that new settlement that we've been talking about, Nahal Haletz, in the Gush Etzion settlement block, which is intended to disrupt the Palestinian territorial continuity west of Bethlehem. Churches for Middle East Peace opposes all unilateral confiscation of land from Palestinians, specifically the violence of right-wing settlers taking the Qamsiyah family land. We oppose the arrest and detention of Alice and her mother, who of course have since been released. We oppose settlements as a violation of international law and the illegal outpost that's at Al-Makor. And the context of settlement expansion and settler vigilantes under Smotrich, we call for the U.S. government to acknowledge Israeli settlements as illegal according to international law and to take a stand against them, holding Israeli settlers accountable for violations of human rights. Fighting also resumed yesterday after a brief calm following a heavy exchange of strikes on Sunday between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah. State media reported that Israeli strikes targeted the Lebanese border of Tar Harfa and the port of the coastal city of Sidon. There were no immediate reports of casualties. Later in the day, Hezbollah said it targeted military surveillance equipment in northern Israel. And the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said that he has extended the tour of the Teddy Roosevelt aircraft carrier in the Middle East. According to the Pentagon, the decision came after those escalations between Israel and Hezbollah and those cross-border attacks. The near-term risk of a broader Middle East war seems to have eased somewhat after the exchange of fire between Hezbollah and Israel, but Iran continues to pose a significant danger as it weighs a potential strike on Israel, according to Air Force General Brown, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Brown said that how Iran responds will dictate how Israel responds, which will dictate whether or not there will be further escalations at this point. Of course, also the response of the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen remains a wild card. One of the rockets launched from Lebanon in a heavy exchange between Hezbollah and the IDF on Sunday was fired from near a position operated by UNIFIL, the UN's peacekeeping forces, according to Reuters. There was an oil tanker that continues to burn in the Red Sea that has been determined to be a possible environmental disaster, according to the State Department spokesperson Miller today. Or maybe that was yesterday. He said that the tanker has spilled 1 million barrels of oil, or 4 times as much oil as the Exxon Valdez disaster in Alaska in 1989. That was just reported in the New York Times. On August 6th, for the first time ever, the U.S. government submitted a formal amicus curiae, a brief to the International Criminal Court, addressing the court's exercise of jurisdiction connected to the ICC's prosecutor's request for the insurance of arrest warrants on the investigation of the situation regarding Palestine. As many know, the prosecutor of the ICC had formally commenced the investigation in March of 2021, but after the violence of October 7th, the prosecutor on May 20th, 2024, announced that he was seeking the authorization of arrest warrants against Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Gallant, as well as against Hamas leaders Sinwar and the 2 Hamas leaders who reportedly have been killed, Mohammed Diaf and Ismail Haniyeh. The U.S. has strongly criticized that step, including in statements from President Biden and Secretary Blinken, and there have been calls for legislation, including a bill that has been passed in the House of Representatives that would compel the administration to impose sanctions on the ICC and its personnel. The administration has indicated that it opposes such legislation, saying that there are more effective ways to defend Israel and that it stands ready to work with Congress on options to do so, but there's significant tension between Democrats and Republicans on whether or not to take up a Senate version of the legislation, which has been proposed by Senators Risch of Idaho and Tom Cotton of Arkansas and others. A few dates to be praying about on the horizon. Pray for September 9th, which is the upcoming hearing of Shadi Khoury, the young Palestinian boy, 16 years old, who was accused of having lynched a car in Jerusalem. He spent months under house arrest. He's since graduated from high school, but the case is unresolved. His next hearing is on September 9th. And we heard from the Tent of Nations in their latest report. They said after peaceful persistence, that has prevented the confiscation of the farm that's been in their family since 1916. Over these 108 years, the family has faced many attempts to break our spirit, but we have held forth and given thanks for the simple fact that we're still here. Their re-registration case is scheduled for September 11th, 2024. So we'd encourage you to keep that in prayer. They said the situation in the West Bank has worsened. A good deal of architectural land owned by Palestinians is being taken by settlers. Settlers and military have built roads through our property and in the process has destroyed trees and fences. A structure is being built by settlers on portions of our land. Roadblocks have been placed that restrict access to our property. The family is intimidated and threatened as we continue to work on the farm. We've responded to these intrusions by appealing to the Israeli Supreme Court about the re-registration. And so that court hearing is part of what they're hoping will happen coming up on September 11th. They invite people to consider volunteering at the farm as a way of showing international presence, offering protection and support. So reach out to us if you want more information about that. That's September 11th. Shadi's hearing is September 9th. Consider taking a solidarity trip to Palestine. Join us on our trip to Jericho coming up in November for the End Still We Rise Summit, coming alongside Palestinian women who are doing such incredible work advocating for peace. We'll continue in our efforts calling for an end to all violence, a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire. We'll continue in that work alongside of one another as we pray for peace.